Primetime Fantasy Football is brought to you by Next Level Radio. Head to nextlevelradioonline.com for past episodes of Primetime Fantasy Football and the Showcast, plus celebrity guest spotlight. Now on to this week's Primetime Fantasy Football.
People I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. Hey, front of acres with a mansion on my land. Fools, jacuzzis, and my neighbors can't stand the way I live. This old so fast. Ain't got your ladies and prime time is all that.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of primetime.
Yeah, man, it's Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright. Yeah.
Welcome into Week 16 of Primetime Fantasy Football presented by Next Level Radio. It's Championship Week here on Primetime Fantasy Football. I am your host, Adam Gorey, joined as always by Steve Richards. How you doing, Steve?
Good.
Joe cannot join us tonight, unfortunately. And again, like last week, we're recording on Thursday. Not only because the Thursday night football game is somewhat meaningless. Actually, it's completely meaningless. And hopefully you really don't have anybody on those teams. Maybe Delaney Walker. Maybe take a stab at a Toby Gerhardt or something. But other than that, really nothing going for that game, so it doesn't matter anyway. So we're going to bring you there's Saturday games this week, which is kind of exciting and kind of confusing. I think a lot of people keep forgetting every year that they do this, but they do it every year. So, you're one of those people.
It is weird. And the Eagles game is like a 4:30. It's a really weird time.
Yeah,
which I guess is when they play on Sunday, but they do it on a Saturday.
The other game's at 8:30, right? The Niners and Chargers.
Yeah.
So we're gonna bring you through. Not only recap what we did last week, but we're going to let you know how we feel about those guys this week, along with our picks for this week, some over-unders later on in the podcast. But it's championship week, so now's the time to buckle down. First, we want to point out how much of an idiot that Joe is.
Yes.
Last week, if you remember, I don't have the sound clip with me, but you can go back to last week's podcast, and he took the under on every single tight end when we did over-under because they weren't quote-unquote elite tight ends, and said he'd probably get 2 out of 3 right because one of those guys would probably go over. I think by one of those guys he actually meant all 3 because all 3 did in fact go over, making Joe look like a fool. Steve and I were a little smarter than that. And then Steve, though, however, apparently was not too smart. And by the way, I'm not just picking on them. Steve did the prep for this. He threw these in here and called himself an idiot because Derek Anderson outscored Josh McCown by a full 3.2 points.
Full 3.2.
Yeah, that could
McCown's 2 lost fumbles.
That could have gotten you into the championship, those 3 points.
Could have.
But if you were playing those guys and you end up in the championship, you might as well be playing Mark Sanchez and Robert Griffin III.
Yeah.
Which I'm doing.
Yeah.
Not RG3, though. So let's before we get real too deep into it, let's talk about the hot topic this week, which is DeMarco Murray, who had surgery on I believe it's just a broken finger. They're calling it a broken hand, but everything I hear, it's just like it's part of his left ring finger. So
you got me. I don't know.
I guess it's
broken.
Yeah, I should ask my wife. She's a nurse, but he's practiced today, Thursday. He was listed as it did not practice Wednesday, even though apparently he was observed doing some practicing type things. I don't know how that works. But Steve, let's get your opinion on number one. If he does play, now the game is at 4:25 on Sunday, so it's a late game. So, unless you have like Joseph Randle, and we'll talk about Joseph Randle and Lance Dunbar, but if he does play, if it comes down, I guess they release it for like 3 o'clock, 3:30. And they say he's active, would you play him in a championship game?
Oh, I got burned by that a while ago with Brandon Marshall when he wasn't supposed to play, and then he ended up playing, and I think it was a Sunday night game, and that was a game he ended up scoring 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns, yeah, I remember it well.
Yeah, when you get a star like this, if they say he's going to play, then you might as well play him because he's been the best running back all year, fantasy-wise. Yeah. And I guess NFL-wise as well with all the yards and carries he's getting. So you play him if he's going to play, but if he's going to play is the caveat.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. If it comes down and they say he's active, I'd rather have 50% of DeMarco Murray than 100% of a guy like, I don't know, like Fred Jackson or something like that.
Yeah, maybe Boom Herron.
Boom Herron, yeah. So, yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, if they say he's active, you've seen that they're not going to run him out there if they think that he's going to get hurt again. And this game's big for them, so that's why he has a chance to play. But if he doesn't play, would you play Joseph Randle or Lance Dunbar, or would you stay away from both of them?
I mean, Randall is more talented for sure, but
Yeah.
they're definitely going to go committee. And I would certainly think that they would rely more on the pass with Tony Romo looking healthy again, and Des Bryant on the outside, and Jason Witten kind of catching fire. The passing game looks much better coming down in the end of the year than it did the beginning of the year. So I think it's committee, and I'm not sure that I would be able to trust either one.
So if you had
I'm not sure what your option would be, though.
Yeah, if you had to pick one, who would it be?
Randall, for
Randall.
sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he's definitely more talented.
Yeah, I mean, looking at his stature, he's much more comparable as far as size and weight goes with DeMarco Murray. Lance Dunbar's a little smaller. He's definitely, in a PPR, I might lean Dunbar because I think you could see him get some more catches out of the backfield. But I think the way it might work is that Randall handles the early downs and Dunbar comes in as either a rest or a third down back kind of guy, or, a first and long, second and long kind of situation. Which actually I think plays better for Randall because you've seen how often the Cowboys like to run it on first down. So if he's in
I don't know
there,
if that's because I'm playing or not, but
that's true. But if he is in there on first down and they continue their game plan, you could see Randall do better. But the other thing is, I forget where I saw this, but I believe DeMarco Murray, 8 of his 11 rushing touchdowns have come from like goal-to-go situations or something along those lines. And I think Randall would handle all the goal line carries. So
sure, yeah. And he's got more potential, like breakout potential, and he's got home run potential as well.
I would agree, though.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would agree with you, though, when you said that depending on who else is on your team would depend if I play Randall. I mean, if I'm looking at, like I said, Fred Jackson or Boom Herron, I think I'd still rather go Randall if Murray doesn't play.
Yeah, and I also like to add the fact that it's a 4:25 game. I don't see DeMarco Murray playing at all when he had surgery on his hand this week. So if you can get out ahead and find somebody on the waiver wire, please do the planning out ahead and move forward as if he wasn't playing instead of banking on him playing when it's a 4:25 game. That gets hairy real quick.
All right, so let me give you this situation here because I do have DeMarco Murray, as you know. Pick 2 of these guys, all right?
Yeah.
Joseph, this is if DeMarco Murray doesn't play, obviously. Joseph Randle, Jonathan Stewart, Latavius Murray.
Well, unfortunately, at this point, the time that they're playing comes into play.
Yeah.
Because DeMarco Murray is another one of those guys.
So basically, it'd have to be probably Stewart. Like I would have to decide on Stewart early.
So Stewart's the early one, and then
Murray and Randall are late games. Yeah.
Right. I would go ahead and roll Stewart out, and that way, because you kind of have a luxury with being able to decide. I would decide between Latavius Murray and DeMarco Murray at that point.
Or Joseph Randle.
Well, yeah, but I would, if DeMarco Murray plays DeMarco Murray, if DeMarco Murray doesn't play Latavius Murray.
I gotcha. Okay, so no Joseph Randle regardless.
Right, exactly.
Out of those three guys.
You can roll Jonathan Stewart out regardless, I think. It also might come out, the DeMarco Murray news might come out early as well.
Yeah, that would be, obviously a dream scenario for a lot of people.
Yeah, but you kind of have the luxury of having another 4 o'clock game and a 1 o'clock game that isn't such a bad matchup. Jonathan Stewart's probably going to score some good points this week, I think.
He has a good matchup, yeah. That's for sure.
So
the only thing that worries me there is with DeAngelo Williams coming back.
Yeah, but the situation could definitely be worse, and I'm sure it is worse for some other DeMarco Murray owners.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, well, now that we got that out of the way, let's get on to the usuals, and we'll start off as we usually do with high-low. First off, we'll recap last week's. I'll just run through them all real quick, and then I'll tell you my opinion on them, and Steve, you can tell us your opinion since Joe's not with us. Tony Romo against the Colts, got that one right. Or sorry, he played the Eagles last week. I got that one right. He plays the Colts this week. I like him again this week. I think, especially if DeMarco Murray doesn't play, they're going to have to be forced to pass it a little more, and I think that actually is good for his value. Latavius Murray, I got a red. He only had 7 points. He plays Buffalo this week. I don't know that obviously I don't like the matchup, but again, he is getting a lot of carries. He's actually doing pretty well, yards per carry even. So I see him as like a possible flex RB3 this week. Isaiah Crowell, Steve got a red. At Carolina this week, I like the matchup, so I actually am okay. He's probably an low RB2 for me. Moncrief, got a big fat 0 at Dallas. I actually like him better this week than I did last week. But I still think he's like a boomer bust kind of guy. And then Eli got the green light. Plays St. Louis this week. I think I'm okay inserting him back on my bench. St. Louis has a pretty good defense. And then Justin Forsett had a measly 4 points. Plays Houston. Back to RB1 status this week for me. So, Steve, what do you think about those guys?
I didn't, take inventory of everything that you said, so I'll just run them down too. Romo, I do like Romo. I fall in the camp of I don't think Murray's going to play this week, so I think Romo has a chance to put up a lot of passes and score a lot of points. Latavius Murray, I'm not excited about, just with the matchup, and he was kind of came out hot, and now people are more aware of him. Buffalo's defense is really good. They held who did they play last week? They held Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning without a touchdown pass in the last 2 weeks. So that's obviously through the air, but
I will say this though,
really
it's
good.
in Oakland, and Oakland is 2-0 in their last 2 home games.
Oh, buddy! Oh, that changes everything.
6-3 final score.
As far as Crowell goes, that's tough. They're tough to gauge right now just because they're not very good, and Manziel
is
is
terrible.
Yeah, I just don't know that you can trust them, and I would fall under the same camp with Moncrief as well. It's just hard to trust them at this point, especially in a championship game this week. I wouldn't roll him out. I think there's definitely better options that you could find in championship week.
That's true. I also forgot he is nursing a hip injury, and according to Mike Pettin, the head coach, he's not sure how healthy he is.
Crowell, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't play, do you think you'd play West?
You could, but again, the offense is just so bad that
Yeah.
I don't know that there's anything that you could do and trust it going in.
Yeah, they made a QB change late in the season when their team was actually, what were they, 7-5 or something? Like, they were actually not bad, and their team just got much worse all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think it was trending downhill before that, and
Yeah.
it certainly hasn't gotten any better since they put Manziel in.
Right.
Eli, I'm not excited about this week, especially in a championship week. If I want to,
Yeah.
I'm kind of counting on my quarterback to score me a bunch of points.
Yeah, he was a plug and
St.
play
Louis
last
is a tough
week.
defense. What's that?
He was a plug and play last week.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that he's not a plug and play this week.
Yeah.
In St. Louis, that's a tough matchup. And then Forsett, I don't see any reason why Forsett can't bounce back. Certainly better than 4.7, which is what he scored last week.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be able to bounce back this week. I think he's got a lot of potential. Houston's defense is okay, but he's been pretty good all year, so I think you're going to roll out if you have him.
We didn't put him on our 0 to heroes this week, but he's definitely a 0 to hero candidate.
Yeah, I would agree.
I thought it was probably too easy.
Yeah, he's got good potential for a bounce back.
Did you say what you thought of Moncrief this week?
Yeah, he's tough to trust at this point.
Yeah.
Good
dynasty guy though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He's got huge dynasty potential. Wayne's on the downtick.
Yeah, I agree.
If you can go get Moncrief and you're in a dynasty league, you can just pick him up and stash him or something like that. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's get on to this week's picks then. C.J. Anderson is my first guy at Cincinnati. They give up the 5th most to running backs. I think it seems like he's the new DeMarco Murray, and the way I mean that is that they have given him an average of 27, more than 27. It's like 27.2 or something like that. More than 27 carries per game the last 4 that he's been starting. And he's averaging about 4.4 yards per carry and a touchdown in each of those games. So He hasn't scored a touchdown in each, but he's had 4 touchdowns over the last 4 games, so that averages out to 1 per game, if your math isn't good. Marcus Colston's my next guy versus Atlanta. The Falcons are giving up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers, and Colston has been reliable, it seems, as of late. He's not going to give you a big flash and hit a home run like 20-some-odd points, but if you just need like a wide receiver 3 or a flex to get you like 8 to 10, possibly 15, I think he's going to be your guy this week. He adds in that touchdown. I think he gets you into that 14, 15-point range. Other than weeks 3 and 13, at least one wide receiver per game has gotten double digits against the Falcons. Stills has been getting a lot of good yards, but he hasn't been getting the touchdowns. Colston's been getting a lot of the touchdowns when it comes down to it amongst wide receivers, other than maybe Toon, the other guy, who I'm not touching with a 9-foot pole. I think Colston is that end zone threat. So I actually think if anyone's going to score double digits this week against that bad Falcons offense, wide receiver wise, I think it's Marcus Colston. So Steve, what do you think about Anderson and Colston?
I think Anderson is a must start at this point. Like you said, he's been one of the best running backs coming down the stretch. And people talk about how Peyton Manning hasn't been good fantasy-wise. There's a direct correlation between that and C.J. Anderson being great fantasy-wise. They've just started running it more for whatever reason. But they've really done a good job of establishing the running game, and there's no real reason to get away from that. So I think C.J. Anderson's a really good pick, and if you ended up picking him up, then that's good work, and you're probably carrying him deep into the playoffs with C.J. Anderson. For Colston, I don't know, he kind of falls under the Moncrief category, not necessarily as much downside. Like his floor is higher, but he's really inconsistent for me. Maybe a flex, like you said, if you need a wide receiver 3 or a flex. I don't know that 8 to 10 is like a lock. Like I think his floor is probably 5 or 6, which would hurt you in a championship week. But he's definitely a viable flex option if you're looking for a flex option.
Cooks went out. I think in week 11, Cooks got hurt. So the first full game was week 12, I believe. Colston was back. 14 points, 7.5, 7.2, and 12.5 for Colston.
Well, that's pretty good. So, the numbers don't lie there. So maybe 8 to 10 is his floor. So that makes it even better for a flex option. So
I will give you this.
10 out of your flex, then that's good stuff.
I will say this. One of those 7s was 16 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, so that was a down week.
That was a down week, yes.
But yeah, I mean, if you can get 10 out of your flex, that's good stuff. So there might be better options, but he's right on the border of being a solid flex option. So
all right, so flex, Latavius Murray or Marcus Colston?
Yikes.
I think I'd go Murray.
I think I would too.
Because I think he's guaranteed. I know it's a tougher matchup, but I think he's guaranteed the touches. And
they're going to still give him the ball and stuff. Yeah. He'll have plenty of opportunity.
And he has more upside. I think their floor is about the same, actually, to your point with his floor. I think Murray's floor is probably same, about 6, 7, 8 points. But
it's tough for a running back not to score 7 or so.
Right.
Especially somebody that catches it out of the backfield.
Yeah, exactly.
So for me this week, my 2 starters, first Lamar Miller. They play against Minnesota this week. It's kind of been up and down for Lamar Miller lately, but I think this is a great matchup for him going into championship week. His touches have been down, but I don't think they're going to do that this week. For me, at least, he's a high-end RB2 with RB1 upside. So I think no matter what, you got an RB2 on your hands with a good matchup against Minnesota. But I think that if you have somebody else on your roster, I think this guy has potential to become an RB1 for you, which is a good time to get 2 RB1s in there. My other guy is Matt Stafford. They're playing at the Bears, and the Bears are just broken all over the place right now. There's new stories that come out every day about how broken the Bears are. That people talking about each other in the locker room, behind each other's backs, and things like that. They've kind of given up on the season and quit on the coach, which is the worst thing that you could possibly do, really. This all benefits the Lions and Stafford in particular. I would look for a huge bounce back from Stafford in what's been pretty much a down year. I think that when I call it a vintage game, I think he could have some kind of game where He throws for like 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you get a really solid week out of a guy that might be a plug-and-play at this point for a lot of people in Matt Stafford. And the Bears are the worst fantasy pass defense in the league this year, just to add that caveat. That's kind of why he was on the radar to begin with. So Lamar Miller against Minnesota and Matt Stafford in Chicago. What do you think about these two, Adam?
I agree. Lamar Miller, obviously, it's a good matchup. I think you see him get... I don't know if I could go RB1 on him. He does have a little RB1 possibility there, but I'd still put him maybe in that mid, maybe even low-end RB2. But he's a guy for me that you got to start this week against Minnesota. I mean, he does have that upside there, and I think his floor, like we were talking before with the other two guys, is probably this week, probably about 10 points. I would expect at least 10 points from him this week.
Yeah.
With the possibility of like 16, 17 if he adds a touchdown or two. And then Matt Stafford, Chicago's terrible. I mean, they are just so bad. So
it's embarrassing.
Throw Stafford out there, throw Tate out there. Obviously, you're throwing Calvin Johnson out there. On the flip side of that, do not, under any circumstances, play
Reggie Bush?
No. Jimmy Clausen. Yeah, don't play Jimmy Clausen.
Cheer for old Notre Dame.
You could see a Johnny Manziel performance from Jimmy Clausen. They're throwing him into the fire against a really tough matchup in his first game in I think like 3 years, maybe more than that.
He has 3 career touchdown passes.
And he played a full season for Carolina one year. Pretty much a full season.
I don't know if he played a whole year, but I know he has 3 career touchdown passes, and he played a lot of games.
He played a lot of games that year, yeah. I know that for sure. But yeah, don't play him. If you're like I don't know why anybody would think about playing him, but if you're one of those people, don't. Yeah,
if you have Cutler, find a different quarterback.
Yeah. I know the guy Steve and I, you talked about the guy in our keeper league is playing RG3 because he had Jay Cutler. And
Bob Griffin.
As much as I'm not we'll talk about RG3 later and over under, as much as I'm not huge on RG3, he'll probably double Jimmy Clausen's points. And as I'm saying all this,
you would hope he would do better than that.
Yeah, Jimmy Clausen will probably end up with 30 points, but that would be a miracle. All right, so let's go on to the sits we had, the bench guys we had for last week, our lows. I had the San Diego running backs got a green between 4 guys. They had 20 carries for 56 yards, so nobody did well. Play San Francisco this week, same boat. I'm not feeling it. And then I had Andy Dalton, 117 passing yards and a pick. They creamed Cleveland, but it was all running. So this week they played Denver. They're not going to be able to run the ball quite as well. I actually like Andy Dalton as a plug-and-play possibility this week. If you have like a guy like Cutler and Andy Dalton's out there, I have no problem adding him in there. I think he can get you like 17 points, which if you had Cutler and you're kind of scrambling, that's all you can ask for, to be honest.
That's what Cutler will give you, yep.
Yeah, so I guess we'll do it differently, Steve. We'll let you talk about those 2 guys and then talk about your guys from last week.
Okay. I agree with you with the San Diego. San Diego's kind of trending downward, and San Francisco is not going to help their running game, whether they have Ray McDonald in there or not. San Francisco is a pretty good run defense, so I wouldn't start any San Diego running backs this week either. Andy Dalton, those stats that you mentioned last week added up for 3.98 points, and they made him the highest scoring quarterback in that game fantasy-wise. So good for Andy Dalton. Congratulations. Right. And against Denver, I'm not really sure though. I'm not completely in on Andy Dalton. He's had enough bad games where it's kind of hard to trust him to have a good game against a team like Denver. But I mean, you probably are. I think Cutler might be the situation where you probably are scrambling to find somebody if you had Cutler. So Dalton might be the only viable option you have. So I can see it as a viable option, but I would look closely before just plugging Dalton in there without thinking about it.
Andy Dalton or Phillip Rivers?
Phillip all the time.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, you shouldn't have asked me that question.
Andy Dalton or Mark Sanchez?
I like Sanchez this week, just because Washington's so bad. So I would play Sanchez. I think this is a classic, good Eagles system game for Mark Sanchez.
I agree.
I think he could score 20 points.
Yeah, I agree. Andy Dalton or Bob Griffin? Push?
Yeah, push.
Push?
No, I refuse to push. Dalton.
I think I'd go Dalton too. Andy Dalton or Jimmy Clausen?
Oh, everybody. I might go Manziel over Jimmy Clausen.
That's a good one. I actually think I would go Manziel over Jimmy Clausen. By the way, we officially reached our Jimmy Clausen quota for the podcast. But yeah, he hasn't started a game since 2010.
Yeah,
and
he's back in there.
he won one game out of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So he went 1-11 that year.
That's not bad.
It's pretty good. All right, so let's talk about your lows from last week, Steve.
Yeah, I had the only yellow out of the 6. Everybody else was in the green for the benches, and it was the Vikings backfield.
It was only because of a touchdown that you got.
Yeah, it was only because they scored a goal line touchdown. They had 18 carries for 46 yards as a unit between 3 guys. They have another matchup against the Dolphins this week, which I'm not particularly fond of. I would certainly look to avoid the Vikings backfield as a whole again this week. And then I also had Flacco, who did exactly what I said was going to happen. He managed the game, and they won in different ways. They actually just didn't score that many
I
points.
was going to say because Forsett didn't even do well.
Yeah, their defense just played well, and they won a fantasy boring game. He ended up with 220 yards and a touchdown, and nothing else, which is good for 13.6, which just isn't what you're looking for out of a quarterback. So
yeah,
that was a green there. They get Houston this week. I think he's a half decent plug and play option. I would probably start him over Dalton, which is where we might differ.
Yeah, I would disagree. I would start.
Yeah,
Dalton over Flacco.
I'll put Flacco in there ahead of Andy Dalton, I think. So, yeah, what do you think about these two guys? I guess we just talked about Flacco. But...
Yeah, I'm kind of low on both of them again this week.
Yeah.
Flacco, it's not a terrible matchup. Again, if you're scrambling, like I said, I'd take Dalton over Flacco, but I'd take Flacco over probably quite a few other guys.
Yeah.
Maybe he's like I would put him in like a maybe 15, 14 range for me. He's
a mid-range guy for sure.
Yeah, I mean a lot of guys are carrying 2 quarterbacks on their roster, so you might be kind of hung out to dry. I would take Flacco over Eli this week.
Okay.
Eli playing St. Louis.
Yeah.
It's a better matchup.
Yeah, I agree. In St. Louis too, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be tough in there.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well then let's talk about Joe's guys. Joe had Trey Mason, got the green light. Josh Gordon got the green light. Trey Mason plays the Giants. I actually like him this week. Giants, the run defense is god-awful. I almost put him on a high list, but I decided not to just in case. But, I mean, the Giants are just not a good rush defense. And then Josh Gordon, that's actually a good matchup too. Unfortunately, when Johnny Manziel is throwing it to the other team, you can't get receptions. So I actually would go back and bench Josh Gordon this week again.
Yeah, I was going to put Trey Mason on high list as well, but I saw that he was on Joe's bench list last week, so I figured we could talk about him here.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Try to pick different guys. So, but yeah, for sure, Trey Mason, go ahead and throw him in. I think he has the potential to be a guy that can win you a championship because he's got such a good matchup, and he's not necessarily somebody you're counting on for a lot of points. But I think he could score a lot of points this week and win somebody a championship.
Yep.
And then exactly what you said with Josh Gordon, for sure. I said it last week, and I'll say it forever as long as Johnny Manziel's in. He's going to struggle, and Josh Gordon isn't going to be any kind of beneficiary from that. So I would not play Josh Gordon at all.
Good call by you. So let's go on to this week's low picks. I'm going to start things off with Cam Newton against Cleveland. He's back at practice this week, but this is a terrible matchup for him. Same team as I had on my low last week because Dalton played Cleveland last week. And again, as you saw, Dalton did not do well. So they still have only given up 20 points to only one quarterback this year, and it's still Andrew Luck. So Cam's last start was his best of the year, so you might be tempted to throw him in there. But that was his 3rd game over 20 points this entire year. I don't expect another performance over 20. I'm going to probably put him at around 15 this week. So I'm low on Cam this week against Cleveland. I just don't think he's going to get it going. And then you got Andre Williams at St. Louis. I'm taking Joe's approach on this one. Jennings is probably not going to play, so you might jump after Williams' last start against Tennessee. However, I don't know if you have looked at all lately, but Tennessee's a terrible run defense, as we've talked about a few times. St. Louis is a lot better than that. I'm going to go ahead and guarantee he doesn't get over 100 yards. So you're going to have to rely on that touchdown. And St. Louis has only given up 6 rushing touchdowns all year, so I actually don't think he gets over 10 points this week. So I'm low on Andre Williams and Cam Newton. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I have another guy on my low list that hints at Cam Newton. So I'll just go with Andre Williams and then go into mine. But I agree with Andre Williams.
Can I interrupt you real quick? Blake
Yeah,
Bortles
please.
just threw a touchdown pass, so I thought you
Yes.
might want to know that.
Bortles service.
Continue.
Who was it to, and was it sweet?
It was Mercedes Lewis.
Okay, wonderful. Andre Williams has kind of proven at this point that he's not that effective as the lead back. Like, he had some good games and some bad games, but he's just not consistent enough. And like you said, that screams, okay, look at the matchup and see what the matchup says. And St. Louis is not a good matchup. So I think Andre Williams is a good pick, and I think that he'll struggle this week.
Yeah.
And you can avoid him. And you probably have better options just because Andre Williams has been so inconsistent that you probably haven't been relying on him all year, I wouldn't think.
We talked about Stewart, Latavius Murray, and Joseph Randle if DeMarco Murray doesn't play. I would take all 3 of those over Andre Williams this week.
I would agree. Andre Williams just isn't trustworthy at this point. He's not. If Randall, yeah, like you said, if DeMarco Murray doesn't play, obviously that changes everything for Randall if Murray plays. But
yeah,
I would take just because of that home run threat, and Randall might be a better running back overall than Andre Williams. Anyway.
Yeah, I think he is.
So for my lows, I'm taking a shot on one, which is Jeremy Hill, who has they're playing Denver this week, like we mentioned, with Andy Dalton. And it's tough to bench a guy who's been so good, but it's championship. So I would play the matchups if I'm ever playing the matchups, just because I don't want to rely on somebody and get a tough matchup and then lose because I play Jeremy Hill, just because Denver's defense is so good against the run. And I think Denver is going to go up early because Cincinnati just isn't a good matchup as a team against Denver. So I think there's going to be a lot of throwing, and that's not exactly good for Hill. It's better for Gio Bernard. I'm obviously not going to play him either, but I think Jeremy Hill is going to have a tough matchup this week and a tough week, which sucks because he's been so good, but you might have some better options on there on the bench if you look at the matchups. And then Kelvin Benjamin is where I alluded to Cam Newton. I have him on a bench list as well. I'm not sure if Cam being back is good or bad for Kelvin Benjamin at this point. But I do think that they would ease Cam Newton back in, which means a lot of running, because it's a tough injury for Cam Newton, like you mentioned. So obviously I'm low on Cam Newton as well, so I'm agreeing with you there. And Cam wasn't that accurate before the injury. He wasn't playing all that well this year, as you outlined with your over 20 points only 3 times this year. So I would look for the running game to come up big for Carolina rather than the passing game. So I wouldn't rely on Kelvin Benjamin. I also wouldn't rely on Jeremy Hill, which is a little bit of a shocker. What do you think, Adam?
I'm actually going to... So the whole thing of this is our low picks were saying to bench the guys. And you might think that I would disagree with Jeremy Hill, but I'm actually going to agree with you.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because of exactly what you said. They're probably going to be forced to pass a lot. And that's not good for Jeremy Hill. It's a lot better for Gio Bernard. I'd feel better running Gio Bernard out there. Jeremy Hill, you could see the game like he had a couple weeks ago where he's going to get like 13 carries for maybe like 40 yards. And he's not really going to be involved in the passing game. Maybe he'll get a couple catches for like 20 yards. I think you could see him get, he's going to be very touchdown dependent this week. Very touchdown dependent. And I'm not sure I can rely on that this week. So I could see him getting like 6 points this week. I don't see anywhere near the week he had last week, obviously. But where I will disagree with you is Kelvin Benjamin.
Here we go.
As you know, I'm a proponent of Kelvin Benjamin. I'm a fan of Kelvin Benjamin. I'm a player of Kelvin Benjamin. And I just can't sit him. He is their red zone. Other than Greg Olsen, he's the only other target he's got. And I mean, to your point, I could see him getting 12 targets this week, but only get actually 4 of them being good enough for him to catch. So I could see him getting like 4 catches for 60 yards and no touchdown or a touchdown. And I think he's probably going to be touchdown dependent this week too. I don't think he gets over 100 like he did last week, but I can't bench him. I mean, you've been riding him this far, and, I don't want to tinker with my lineup so much that I'm going to overthink myself here. Now, I'm still going to start him because he does have that ability to get into the end zone. He does make some good catches once in a while. I mean, so...
Yeah, I think you're... I think I picked two guys that are kind of touchdown dependent this week.
Yeah.
Which is what makes me nervous in a championship week when you're relying on touchdowns. But.
No, and that's a good point. But, yeah, I mean, for, like, Hill, I agree. But for Benjamin, I don't know. I might be biased because I like him so much, but I'm still gonna run him out there.
Hey everybody, Ben Beck from Next Level, inviting you to join myself and Adam Gorey every Sunday for another episode of The Showcast. We bring you the best stories in pop culture, the newest stories in film and television, as well as movie reviews, what's going to be released in DVD, as well as coming to the box office for the weekend, and much, much more. All you have to do is search Next Level Radio under the iTunes Store and subscribe, or simply go to our website, www.nextlevelradioonline.com, and you can find our current shows as well as all of our past shows right there on the website. So we hope you join us every Sunday for another new episode of The Showcast.
Hi, this is Kim Coates. I play Tig Traeger on Sons of Anarchy. You're listening to Next Level Radio.
He was a no one, 0-0. Now he's 100. He's a hero.
Prime time fantasy football's 0 to hero.
0 to hero, just like that.
Okay, so let's recap last week's 0 to heroes. I had Jimmy Graham caught 5 catches of his 7 targets for 87 yards, so that's good enough for a yellow because he got 8 points in a standard league, 13 in a PPR. Kind of thought he would have a much bigger game, but he does play Atlanta. You're not benching him, right?
No, never.
Championship week.
No.
Yeah.
Tight end.
So who'd you have, Steve?
Yeah, I had Josh McCown, who we talked about a little bit earlier, and he would have had a great week if he played basketball because he was in every stat category, but unfortunately he plays quarterback, so he only threw for 154 yards and a touchdown and also had a pick, but he had 2 carries for 21 yards and a touchdown. A rushing touchdown is always good for a quarterback, but he had 2 lost fumbles, so all that cluster poop adds up to 13.26, which is a red. And this week they play against Green Bay, which I think I'm kind of off Josh McCown at this point, and especially in a championship week that you can go ahead and look for somebody else.
Yeah, I agree.
Josh McCown.
He's back on my bench. Back on the bench. Joe had Jeremy Maclin, 4 catches on 6 targets, 98 yards. So that's a yellow, 9.8 and a standard, 13.8 in a PPR. We kind of talked a little bit about Sanchez playing Washington. You like Sanchez, you got to like Maclin this week, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I think you can roll him out. I think Matthews might have a nice little comeback as well.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about him, but he might be flying under the radar.
I think
nice
both. Yeah, I think both of these guys are in for bounce back weeks, possibly 10 points each, 10 or more.
Yeah.
So let's go on to our picks for this week. I'm going to start things off sticking to that Philadelphia-Washington game. I'm going to start things off with Deshaun Jackson. Playing the Eagles, he had 2.4 points last week. The Eagles give up big plays to wide receivers. I think they give up like the 5th most points to wide receivers or something like that. It's a lot. I know that.
It's plenty.
Yeah, it's top 5 easily. They give up big plays is their problem. Their secondary,
which is what he is.
Yeah, their secondary is not good. You know what? I mean, their defensive line is very good, so I don't think I would expect much from Alfred Morris in this game. And I actually don't even expect all that much from RG3 because I think he's going to be under pressure all day because their defensive line is good. Even their linebackers who have had injury problems have been good, but their secondary has just been absolutely terrible. So he's a big play wide receiver. I think. He put up over 100 yards and a touchdown last time they played. I think if RG3 is going to get, any type of resemblance of a passing game going, it's going to have to be to Deshaun deep against that weak secondary. So I think you could see him catch a couple deep balls. He might throw a touchdown in there for you and get you that like 15, 16 points. But, I see him bouncing back easily over 10 points this week. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, for me, it's just a perfect storm of him being a big play receiver and the Eagles giving up a lot of big plays. And then, like you mentioned that he went over 100 and a touchdown. I believe that was on he had a huge play play against the Eagles. I think it was like 70 yards plus against the Eagles. So I'm not putting that out of the question at all. So I think that, and it only takes one for somebody like Deshaun Jackson. So I think he's a good candidate for a bounce back for sure. I have a wide receiver as well, and it happens to be Steve Smith Sr. He scored 3.7 last week. Again, they're playing Houston this week. He's had an up and down season, but I think it's up time for him this week. I think he's got a lot of potential because the Texans give up their points through the air. Like I said with Flacco, I think he's an okay plug and play. I think that Steve Smith is also a good option this week. I really like him as a flex play, like where you talk about Colston if you're looking for a flex guy. Steve Smith is going to be my pick as a wide receiver flex with a high upside. And really, I only picked this to tell you that last week he was interviewed and had the flu, and one of the post-game reporters asked him if he was worried about his stamina, and Steve Smith's response was, "Ask my wife about my stamina." So,
classic.
Long story short, he's my hero, and I just wanted to talk about that story. But he also could have a good game. So, what do you think?
He might have a good game, but he'll have even better press conference afterwards.
Yeah.
I think Steve Smith Sr. is your Kelvin Benjamin. that is for me. Okay. Actually, I think he's more than that to you. But, I mean, if you're going by every other week, because week 12 he had a good game. Week 14 he had a good game. So he's due for a week 16 good game.
16, baby.
I don't know. I might take the good radio approach on this one and disagree. I just don't know. Going into championship week, I don't know if I can do it. I mean, he really has been up and down, but he is a character. I'll give him that.
He'll make you pay for that.
Yeah, he will. I'll have to ask him about his stamina later. Let's go to Don't Buy the Hype. Last week, we all got the green light. I had Vincent Jackson. He did catch 6 of his 10 targets for 70 yards. Good enough for 7 points and 13 in a PPR. Against Green Bay this week, I do think they're going to have to throw it a lot. I don't know if that necessarily means that they're going to go to the right team. So I'm not sure I'm high on Vincent Jackson again this week. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know. They were hot kind of in the middle of the year, but I mean, if I said I'm not going to trust Josh McCown, it's tough to trust Vincent Jackson as well. So.
I think same approach as last week. If anybody, I'm going Mike Evans.
Yeah, Evans gets the touchdowns, so you might as well go with the guy that scores all the touchdowns.
Yep.
My guy last week was Steven Jackson. He had 11 carries for 46 yards and a catch for 11 yards. All that adds up to 5.7, which is another green. They're playing at New Orleans this week in a pivotal division showdown between two teams that are under 500. I don't know about Steven Jackson. I think I put him on my list last week just because I don't think he's consistent, and he scored a bunch of points the week before. So I'm sticking to my story that I'm not sure I can just trust him this week. So
yeah, that's tough.
I'm low on him again.
That's tough because, I mean, New Orleans is really bad against the run.
He's got a good matchup, yeah. But he's a Trent Richardson where he doesn't – I mean, he averages no yards per carry.
That's a good point. Yeah, he like I said last week, he is the definition of touchdown dependent. But that being said, I do think if there is a week for him to score a touchdown, it very well could be this week.
That's fair because the matchup's good. So I don't know. I just flex maybe, but at the same time, I'm hoping more than I know what I'm going to get.
RB3 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is a tough one. Would you go him or Latavius Murray?
Murray, upside.
Okay. Him or who did we talk about earlier? Matt Asiata.
Ew, they're the same.
I think I
the
guess
Vikings playing again?
Miami.
Steven Jackson, because I think he's got a better chance of scoring a touchdown.
Yeah. Him or Andre Williams?
I don't like Andre
Steven
Williams.
Jackson or Andre Williams?
Yeah, I don't like either one of them though.
Yeah. If you had to pick.
But I guess Steven Jackson. But I hope I have better options than both of them.
Yeah. See, I don't know. Andre Williams might have a better chance at a touch. That's a push for me. Although, like you said, we don't like to push. I'll play the radio method. I'll go Andre Williams, but I don't like either of them. Andre Williams gets 7 points. Steven Jackson gets 6. All right, and then Joe had Charles Johnson. 7.2 points, 13.2 in a PPR league at Miami. Miami's defense, secondary wise, is really good. So I'd put him on the bench this week.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I wouldn't. He kind of had. I mean, he's kind of caught on like gangbusters, but another guy that's really hard to trust.
Yeah, he's another guy, maybe like a PPR type of league.
Mm-hmm.
He does get like 4 to 6 catches a game. I mean, that's add in.
Sounds like you got a little Charles Johnson versus Landry battle working.
That is a good question. I'd still think I think I'd take Landry between those two.
I think Landry's done it for longer.
Yeah,
and by longer I mean more games in this season than Charles Johnson. And
I also think he probably has a little bit better of a quarterback throwing it to him.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, I like Bridgewater, but I don't know. We'll see. So let's go on to our picks this week. Speaking of Miami, I got Mike Wallace. And as you know, if you've been listening for the past 30 minutes, he plays Minnesota. 16.4 points last week. That was his first week in double digits since week number 10. And he apparently was being covered a lot by a rookie defensive back, not Revis, like people thought. With the rise of Landry, who we were just talking about, Wallace has become a little more unreliable, and Minnesota has given up 100 yards to only 4 wide receivers. And I think he's, like Steve's picks in his lows, I think he's going to be touchdown dependent here. I'd prefer Landry this week, especially in a PPR. We've talked about that a lot. Those 4 receivers, by the way, that they gave up 100 yards to, I think they were all burners. And I know Mike Wallace tends to be, or used to be, a burner. I don't see him as a burner anymore. He doesn't seem to be putting up the burner stats like he used to be. So I think Sammy Watkins, Deshaun Jackson, and I'll have to look up to see who the other guy was that got over 100. But I just don't like him this week. I don't think you're going to rely on him to get over 100 yards again. So I'm not buying the hype on Wallace this week. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I like Landry just because I can count on him a little bit more.
Right.
And like you said, Mike Wallace has kind of been up and down. That stat that it was his first double-digit week since week 10, that's a good one. And that's not something that you can count on going into week 16. So
Percy Harvin and Alshon Jeffrey were the other two.
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey isn't necessarily a burner,
he's
but
not
he's just a good wide receiver.
Yeah,
he's definitely better than Mike Wallace.
I consider Percy Harvin not a burner, but he's a speedy guy.
No, he is. They use him in all sorts of different ways and things like that. So he's a shifty type of guy. And like you said, I mean, if Wallace is trending down away from the burner, then that's a good pickup by you. I hadn't really noticed that, but that's. But long story short, I trust Landry more than you do, so I'm agreeing with you on this one. My don't buy the hype this week is Julian Edelman. They're playing the Jets, which is a good matchup, so that's not my argument. He scored 15 last week, and he scored 20 in week 14, so that's not my argument either.
What is your argument?
Okay, relax over there.
Oh,
but I just don't want to see somebody get burnt in their championship week because they tried Julian Edelman and he got Patriots, which is a term that I just made up, meaning that they just go somewhere else, a la Jonas Gray when he scored 200 yards and didn't get a carry for 3 weeks after that. The Patriots just love to spread it around, and with Gronk as an option and LaFell's still there, I think that there's just too many other options, and there's a chance that Julian Edelman just gets forgotten about. And there's 3 games before Week 14, he was under 10 points in all of them, so he hasn't exactly been tearing it up the entire season. It's kind of been hot lately, so that's kind of when you're hot lately on the Patriots, you're just waiting to get cooled off. So he's not a guy that I'm looking for to score a bunch of points this week. What do you think?
I'm going to take your approach and agree, but not because of any of the things you said.
I'm into that.
So I'm going to agree because he just went back to practice today, limited practice after getting a concussion last week. He hasn't necessarily been cleared yet. They're expecting him to be cleared, but I just don't think that his condition is conducive to a successful game. And like you said, there are a lot of other options out there.
Yeah, wide receiver is certainly no hint or no secret that wide receiver is a good position this year for fantasy.
Yeah. All right, so let's finish up with over under.
It's time for over under.
All right, let's start off with the quarterbacks. I'll start off with RG3 against the Eagles, 19.3.
Under, forever. Under.
I want to say under, too. Phillip Rivers at San Francisco, 14.4.
Over, forever, over.
I should have known. Oh, Jesus. I'm going to say over, barely over.
Okay.
You like him over a lot, I bet. I'm going to say barely,
Sure
like
do.
by a point or two.
Okay, we'll see.
Who are your two guys?
I have Sanchez, who is in the same game as RG3. So RG3 was projected at 19.3. Sanchez is projected at 18.6. So over under 18.6 for Sanchez.
Over.
So are you also going Sanchez will have a better game than RG3 because
Yes.
the projections disagree?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to agree with both.
By the way, these are Yahoo projections, so.
They are, yes. Alex Smith was an interesting one for me this week. They're at Pittsburgh, who isn't good against fantasy quarterbacks for whatever reason. He's projected for 16.76 in a week where Cutler is benched, and you might be looking for a fill-in, and Alex Smith might be available. So over under 16.7 for Alex Smith.
That's tough. Barely over.
I think he's got a chance to go over, too.
By a tenth of a point.
It's really weird, though, because it's impossible to rely
Yeah, that's
on.
a pretty good number, 16.7.
Yeah, which isn't a bad one if that's what you get when you're looking for a replacement for Cutler. So
Yeah, it's
he
more
could be on your radar.
Yeah, it's definitely more points than Cutler's going to get this week.
That's a good idea. Good point.
Let's go to wide receivers. Alshon Jeffrey versus Detroit, 11.6. Over under.
Under.
Ah,
That's an effect.
Thought I was going to get you with this one.
Yeah, no way. Man.
I'm going
You're
under.
cheering for old Notre Dame.
I'm going under as well. Clausen and Detroit, not a good combination. DeAndre Hopkins against Baltimore, 10.1.
Over. I was going to put him on some kind of list that I had, and I forget what it was, but it was a positive list. I think DeAndre Hopkins has a... Oh, wait. Yeah, no, I think he has a good week this week.
It is a good matchup, but they have quarterback problems themselves. I'm going to go under.
Okay, that's fair. Who's it? Tom Savage? Is that what his name
I
is?
think so.
Okay.
Tom Selleck?
Yeah, Tom Selleck. That'd be cool. I have Roddy White at New Orleans. We talked about this game a little bit. He's projected for 10.1.
If he plays, over. Because I'm going up against him. If he doesn't play, over.
Okay. I'm going to go under either way.
I hope you're right.
I don't like the injury, so...
Yeah, I hope you're right. Yeah, it's true. He could be hobbled.
Yeah. I also have Sammy Watkins.
I thought we put this guy in the I Give Up club. Why are we talking about him?
Yeah, well, that's the reason that we put him on this thing.
Son of a bitch.
We can blindly guess at it.
Pass.
You can't do that.
What's the number?
8.6.
At Oakland. Ugh. At Oakland, though. Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Under.
I'm going to go over. I like Kyle Orton. Kyle Orton still plays, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Should I have admitted I don't know who Buffalo's quarterback
He's
is?
a car salesman.
I don't know. He might be. That's good.
Let's go to running backs. Arian Foster against that tough Baltimore defense. 15 points.
Yeah, I don't like this one. I thought about putting him on a low list. I'm going under on 15.
I'm disagreeing. I'm going over. He has had... Let me look it up quick. I probably should have had this prepared. But in games where I'm pretty sure these are games that he's played, complete games, I don't think he had 8 rush attempts for 6 yards in a game that he played the entire game. He probably got hurt that game. So in all but one game this year that he's played the entire game, he scored over 15 points.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and only 2 games all year. That other game, I'm assuming he got hurt because he only had 6 points. So I'm going to go over because I'm just playing the averages here.
Yeah, numbers never lie.
That's
as
true.
They would say.
I think they made a show about that. Jonathan Stewart against Cleveland, and we kind of talked about him a little bit before. 10.1.
Yeah, I like this one. I'm going over. D'Angelo Williams or no D'Angelo Williams? I like this one. He's been hot.
God, this one's tough for me because as much as I like Jonathan Stewart better than D'Angelo Williams, I don't know if Carolina likes Jonathan Stewart better than D'Angelo Williams.
You're convinced they're going to go like 50-50 on this one.
I'm convinced they're... Yeah, I think they're going to go committee, so I'm going to go under.
Has there been any news out on if they're gonna ease D'Angelo Williams back in, or if they're just ready to throw him in, or what?
No.
Like that could be your deciding factor.
Yeah, monitor that closer to game time. Hopefully they say. They might just not say.
That's true.
Then you're screwed.
Also true. My first running back is Marshawn Lynch at Arizona, 11.5.
Under.
Oh, you're the worst. Over. Beastman. And my other guy is Fred Jackson at Oakland for 12.8.
Under.
Yeah, this was a weird one. I guess
That's a high number for him.
I keep doing this for it's Vegas.
It's not Vegas, yeah.
Yeah, like this number sticks, so I keep doing this. Like Vegas is doing it, but it's Yahoo, so I guess it's pretty obviously under if I think it's under.
Yeah, if it was Vegas, I guess I would have to take the over because that's a high number for him.
It's fishy.
Yeah.
It's Vegas.
Let's go to tight ends. Travis Kelce at Pittsburgh, 8.2.
I like Kelsey. We talked about Pittsburgh giving up points to quarterbacks, and the Chiefs don't throw any touchdowns to their wide receivers.
That's a good point.
Kelsey might get one. I'm going over.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm going to take the over. I like him too. I think 8's a pretty good number, though, but I think he does go a little over. Julius Thomas at Cincinnati, 7.3.
This is so weird. He's fallen so far so fast.
He really has.
At Cincinnati, 7.3. I'll go over. I'm fine with I don't like it, but I'll go over. It's a tight end. You're going to play him.
Yeah, I mean, not an elite tight end for Joe, right? He hasn't been. I'm going to go under.
Fair enough. My first guy is Dwayne Allen. They play at Dallas. We talked about this game a little bit. 7.8 for Dwayne Allen.
The fact that Kobe Fleener per Yahoo is projected to get more points on this baffles my mind.
It's a Vegas number.
That is Vegas number, so I'm going to go... I am going to go under, actually, to that number.
Yeah, I don't like that either that much. I'm going to go under, too. I think a lot more for the wide receivers, but not necessarily for the tight ends.
Yeah.
And then my last one is Greg Olsen against Cleveland for 6.7.
Over.
Yeah, I think Greg Olsen is...
He's a top 5 tight end.
As far as the tight end classes go, Greg Olsen is an elite tight end.
Yeah.
He's their leading receiver.
He's
if you can get a...
He's worked his way up there. Like he might be top 5 for the year. I have to look.
Oh, for sure. If you can get a tight end that's a leading receiver on a team, like you have to like that matchup. And 6.7, that's just barely over a touchdown. And Cam Newton looks for him a lot. So if he gets a touchdown, he's way over.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, here's a question. I don't even know if he's playing though. I'm assuming he's playing this week. What about Jordan Cameron? He's probably going to be the leading receiver on Cleveland this week.
He could be if Cleveland. I guess somebody has to be the leading receiver on Cleveland. But are you asking me if I'll play him? I don't think so. I think he's got the Johnny Manziel effect for me.
Greg Olsen's second most fantasy points among tight ends this year.
Yeah, he's been great all year. He hasn't been great all year, but he might be the only tight end in the entire NFL that's been consistent all year.
Yeah, other than maybe Gronk.
Jimmy Graham had 2 weeks where he didn't have a target.
Yeah,
and Gronk was bad for the first 4 weeks.
That's true.
He was on a snap count.
Jordan Cameron's projected at 4.1 points this week. Over under that.
Under.
Johnny Manziel effect.
Because that's fun and Johnny Manziel.
I'm actually going to go over. I'll give him 5. Yeah. All he has to do is score a touchdown and gets over that. Although they have to get into the red zone to do that.
All they have to do is score a point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up for the championship week episode of Primetime Fantasy Football. We will come back next week for those who do have their championship in week 17. We'll be here for you. If you don't, listen anyway, because we'll give you, I think Steve is going to give you some picks, and then Joe and I are going to give you some weekly fantasy, I'm not going to name the 2 websites that do it, but you know what I'm talking about. You pay money each week. You get a new team each week. We're going to tell you who we like and who we think are values and stuff like that. So join us next week. And even after that, we will be doing in the offseason a couple random podcasts here and there, free agency, the draft, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure you subscribe on iTunes. Just search for Primetime Fantasy Football. Once the season does end, make sure you subscribe to Next Level Radio on iTunes, where Ben and I will bring you the showcast every week. And then go to facebook.com/Next Level Radio online, and Twitter is at NXT Level Radio. That is where you'll be able to find out when we do come out with new episodes of Primetime Fantasy Football. Follow Steve at SRichards31. Follow myself at Adam Next Level, and Joe is at JoeyWeb32. I am still going to plug him even though he decided not to come today.
That's nice of you.
Yeah, I'm in a giving mood. I'm in the championship. I'll probably lose, but that's okay. I mean, I think I've been an underdog every week so far, and it's turned out well. So, all right. Well, I think that wraps it up. Steve, you got anything else on your end?
No. If you're watching the Thursday night game as we're recording this, it's going on. I'm sorry. Other than that,
that's 2 weeks in a row. That's bad TV. There has to be something better on.
Yeah. Cecil Short's quarterback rating is 104.2.
Wow, it's probably better than. I don't know. It's going to be better than Jimmy Clausen's.
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel's combined, probably. All right, well, I guess that wraps it up. We'll see you next week when we recap the championship week and give you week 17 on Primetime Fantasy Football.
Thanks for listening to Primetime Fantasy Football. Send your questions in to primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. And make sure to check out our weekly rankings, nextlevelradioonline.com, and go to the Primetime Fantasy Football tab. We'll post the link on Twitter and Facebook at NXT Level Radio or facebook.com/nextlevelradioonline.